Okay, so we're going to look at plant coordination, or controlling plants, are often referred to as plant hormones. This involves a pigment produced in the leaves, which is called phytochrome. Okay, we have two forms of phytochrome. We have P660, which is often referred to as PR, and P730, PFR, and those, as I say, are produced in the leaves. The P730 is the active form, which either brings about flowering or has an inhibitory effect on flowering, and the P660 is the inactive form. You can see these are involved in lots of different things. We're going to focus on whether it brings about flowering or not. Okay, so two interconvertible forms, or two interchangeable forms of phytochrome. The P660, which during daylight or during red light, of 660 nanometers, which tends to be during the day, is quickly converted to P730, that active form, and that will either bring about a stimulatory effect of flowering or inhibitory effect of flowering. And then during nighttime or during darkness, P730 is slowly converted back into P660, or is quickly converted back into P660 if far red light is shown on the leaves or on the plant. Okay, so quick change during the day of P660 to P730, slow change at night of P730 to P660. Okay, again, this just shows your different versions, different forms. The inactive form, P660, quickly converted to P730, slowly converted back during darkness. Okay, now this is important when we talk about two different types of plants. Either we have long day plants, which, as it suggests, need a long day, so they need high levels of P730, or that minimum day length needs to be exceeded. So that would be a summer's day, for example. Or you have short day plants, which flower on a let's say a winter's day, when they need that critical day length to be shorter than a critical value, or they need lower levels of P730 to bring about flowering. Okay, here you can see two examples. So the first one is looking at the short day plants. So they need low levels or low levels of P730, or a shorter length of day to bring about flowering. So this one, you can see along the middle here, we have a critical night length or critical day length, which would bring about flowering or not. Okay, so with short day plants, a longer period of light here, so P660 converted to P730, high levels of P730, not a long enough night for those levels of P730 to drop, because they're converted slowly back to P660. So that high level of P730 has the inhibitory effect on your short day plants, so therefore no flowering. This one, shorter day, so P660 converted to P730. We have a long period of darkness here, so that would allow the levels of P730 to drop down below that critical value, which means that it removes the inhibitory effect and therefore does bring about flowering. Okay, the third one here, you can see we've got a little flash of light in the middle of the darkness. So again, your P660 converted to P730 here. You have a short period of darkness, so P730 converted back to P660 slowly. A burst of light converting that P660 to P730, increasing the levels of P730, allowing that inhibitory effect, and therefore no flowering. For long day plants, as it suggests, they need a longer day, so they need high levels of P730 to bring about flowering. So we can see here a long period of light. So P660 converted to P730, short period of darkness, so that's not enough time for the levels of P730 to drop below that critical value. So it has a stimulatory effect, the high levels of P730, so therefore brings about flowering. With this one, not long enough day, so P660 converted to P730, unfortunately not a high enough level of P730, or the night length is long enough for that P730 to be converted back to P660, not enough P730, so therefore no flowering. And in this one, same as the last, again, you have that period of light, P660 to P730, P730 back to P660 slowly during the darkness, but you have that burst of light when P660 is quickly converted to P730, therefore high levels of P730, and it brings about flowering. Okay, again, we can see the two examples here again of each type of day. So a long day plant with a short day, long night, the P730 doesn't reach that critical level needed to stimulate flowering. So we don't get flowering. In the longer day, you do have that P660 converted to P730, high enough levels of P730 to stimulate flowering. In the short day plants, if you have a short day, longer night, then you have your P660 converted to P730 during the day, but the night period or the dark period is long enough to allow that P730 levels to decrease or be converted back to P660. So it removes that inhibitory effect and brings about flowering. In a longer day, summer's day, P660 is converted to P730, high levels of P730. It would have an inhibitory effect on the short day plants, so therefore you get no flowering. Okay, this little graph is just showing if your day length increases here, your P660 converted to P730, so the level of P730 would increase over that day length above the critical value here, and it would have that stimulatory effect on your long day plants, inhibitory effect on the short day plants. Okay, some other light regimes as well you can see here. So with a long day plant, that day length is not long enough, so no flowering. That day length is not long enough for this particular plant. Again, no flowering. Longer day length here, P660 converted to P730. So therefore, you have high levels of P730, so it does bring about flowering. These long nights, you've got lower levels of P730s converted back to P660. So our critical value for this particular plant is somewhere between, what's that, 11.5 hours and 13.5 hours. So it needs that amount, somewhere between those two levels of light for it to be able to flower. With this one, again, P660 converted to P730 in the light, slow conversion back to P660 in the darkness, and then another period of light where it's quickly converted to P730, short period of darkness, so it would have that stimulatory effect, bringing about flowering in your long day plant. Okay, short day plants this time, short night length here, longer day, so P660 is converted to P730, too much P730, no flowering. Okay, here we've got a longer period of darkness, so low levels of P730, and then a period of light here, which would bring convert the P660 to P730, but that does bring about flowering. There's a long enough night there to convert or to lower the levels of P730, removing that inhibitory effect. So our critical value is somewhere between these two, so 7.5 and about 13 hours. Okay, with number 3 here, we've got a period of darkness, P730 slowly converted back to P660. We've got a burst of light, which will quickly convert it to P730. Another period of darkness, but not long enough to reduce the levels of P730. So it has that inhibitory effect, no flowering. Okay, and the last bit of this topic is looking at different plant growth substances. This is just showing you where the leaves grow is called, or where they originate from is called the nodes. So you have different nodes along the stem of a plant. In between those nodes, or the gap in between those nodes, is known as the internodes. And certain hormones will affect those internodes. So for example, Gibberellins, that we'll look at in a second, is a hormone produced in the leaves, but it causes cell elongation in the internodal region. Okay, so 3 hormones you need to know. Oxen, you'll have heard of from GCSE. It's produced at the tip of the stem, and it moves down the stem and causes cell elongation. So cells getting longer, and that allows growth. Cytokinins, if you think of cytokinesis from mitosis and meiosis, is to do with cell divisions, the cells splitting. It's produced in the meristematic regions, which is where cells are actively dividing. That tends to be at the tips of the roots and the shoots. And as I say, it promotes cell division. And the third one is, as I mentioned, gibberellins, which are produced in the leaves. And again, they produce cell elongation in those internodal regions in between where the leaves grow. Okay, hopefully that helped with A2 plant coordination.